The movie begins at a train station. After completing his patrol of the area, Joe, a train guard, receives a rejection letter. Annoyed and disappointed, he crumples the paper and throws it into his locker. Suddenly, the train supervisor enters and informs Joe that one of the other guards has fallen sick and won't be able to perform his duties that night. Joe complains, explaining that he's tired and has just finished his shift. However, the supervisor urges him to take on the additional work. While listening to the supervisor, Joe notices Ellen in the background. He secretly believes that the one silver lining of working the overnight shift would be spending more time around his unrequited love, Ellen. Motivated by this thought, Joe quickly agrees to take the job. Upon boarding the train, Joe greets all the passengers and begins checking their tickets. When he approaches a blonde woman and asks for her ticket, she struggles to find it. Though Joe is initially irritated, she quickly pulls out some money and pays for her fare. As he continues inspecting tickets, Joe is happy to see Ellen again and feels a strong desire to impress her. He approaches her and initiates a conversation. Eventually, Joe gathers the courage to ask Ellen if she would like to grab a drink with him after the shift. Uncomfortable with the suggestion, Ellen politely declines, saying that no bars will be open that late. Embarrassed and trying to hide his disappointment, Joe returns to his duties, hoping to move past the awkward moment. The scene then cuts to a full moon shining brightly in the sky as the train makes its way toward its destination. Suddenly, a loud noise echoes through the train. Curious and concerned, Joe carefully walks toward his fellow workers to find out what happened. Just as he reaches for a door, the radio crackles to life. The driver announces that the train has hit something on the tracks and advises everyone to stay calm and remain in their seats. The driver exits the train to investigate. As he opens the door, Joe notices that Ellen's food trolley has been knocked over and is a complete mess. Joe tries to help by lifting it, but struggles. Ellen suggests that he focus on checking on the passengers to help keep them calm. Meanwhile, the passengers begin to panic. Joe does his best to reassure everyone, promising that everything will be fine. After some inspection, the driver discovers that the train has struck a wild deer, which is now stuck in the wheels. He tries to remove it, but the animal is too heavy. Suddenly, the driver hears a sound behind him. Out of the bushes, a large, hairy creature leaps out and attacks him. Back on the train, Joe notices the same blonde woman from earlier smoking a cigarette. He approaches her and firmly reminds her that smoking is not allowed on board. When she refuses to cooperate, Joe forcefully takes the cigarette away to prevent her from continuing. At this point, both Joe and Ellen become concerned that the driver is taking too long. Joe grabs a flashlight and calls out the driver's name in hopes of getting a response, but hears nothing. Worried, he looks outside but still finds no sign of the driver. He then contacts the authorities for assistance. Unfortunately, due to a heavy storm, help will take approximately 4 hours to arrive. Joe relays this troubling information to the passengers. Distressed, many of them express frustration and disbelief at the idea of waiting that long. They ask Joe whether the driver can fix the problem. Joe admits that the driver is missing and that they haven't been able to locate him, which causes even more panic among the passengers. In the middle of the chaos, a selfish, middle-aged man, nicknamed Mr. Selfish, steps forward and suggests that everyone simply walk to the next station. Surprisingly, many passengers agree and begin preparing to leave the train. Mr. Selfish tries to open the train's exterior door, but realizes he doesn't have the keys. Joe, fulfilling his responsibility as a guard, reminds everyone about proper safety protocols. He insists that they should all stay on the train and wait for assistance in case something dangerous is out there. Though hesitant at first, Joe eventually gives in and uses the keys to unlock the door so the passengers can leave. Everyone disembarks, determined to make their way to the next station on foot. Joe advises the group to stick together, and they begin their journey through the forest. As they walk, they hear unsettling noises coming from the nearby bushes. Joe and Ellen volunteer to investigate. To their horror, they discover the mutilated body of the train driver lying in the dirt. Shocked and terrified, they immediately run back to warn the others. As they flee, a loud, chilling howl, seemingly from a werewolf, echoes through the forest. The group reaches the train and desperately rushes to get back inside, now truly afraid for their lives. However, None of them realize that a deadly creature is lurking in the forest, watching their every move. As an elderly woman tries to board the train as quickly as she can, the werewolf tracks her through her weakening scent and bites her leg. Fortunately, Joe and several passengers manage to pull her inside, but her leg is already badly injured and bleeding heavily. While the annoying girl cries out in panic, the other passengers lift the elderly woman to a bench and begin administering first aid. The group collectively decides to remain as quiet as possible, hoping the werewolf won't be able to hear them. A moment later, they hear the chilling sound of claws scraping against the side of the train. Joe listens carefully, and when the noise finally stops, he concludes that the creature must have moved on. With the terrifying sounds gone, the group breathes a brief sigh of relief. The passengers now believe the elderly woman's condition is critical and that she needs to be taken to a hospital immediately. Ellen urges Joe to contact the authorities again for emergency support. But when Joe attempts to reach them, he fails, realizing they must have lost all signal. Suddenly, one of the passengers, a technician, steps forward and offers insight about the train's engine. He explains that he knows how engines work and suspects a fuel leak is to blame for the train's failure. He theorizes that a fuel line must have broken during the crash. He concludes that unless it's fixed, the train won't be able to move. With this new information, Joe explains the worsening situation to the group. The elderly woman, growing weaker, murmurs that the creature they saw isn't just a wild animal. It looked like a man dressed in a wolf's skin. She believes it was a werewolf. Just then, the group hears a loud noise on the other side of the train. Joe and the others steel themselves and approach it cautiously, preparing to strike if the creature breaks through the door. To their surprise, when the door finally bursts open, it's not the beast, it's the fat passenger, Mr. Fat. They help him back inside and quickly bring him up to speed on what's happened. Meanwhile, the elderly woman's fever rises due to her severe injury. As she lies in pain, the blonde woman approaches the annoying girl and offers comfort. Grateful for the kindness, the annoying girl opens up and talks about her mother. As the two bond, a loud thud echoes from one of the train doors. The beast is back. In that moment, the annoying girl's phone unexpectedly picks up a signal, and she receives a call from her mother. She answers excitedly, but before they can explain the situation, the werewolf smashes one of the windows. The creature grabs the girl's leg and violently drags her outside. As the group rushes to save her, they hear the werewolf snarling above them. Blood spills across the windows as her screams fade. The passengers scream in horror. Desperate to survive, they all rush to the other side of the train to put distance between themselves and the werewolf. As panic sets in, an old man stands up and urges them to form a proper defense. He suggests using tools from the train to block all possible entry points. The passengers work together, building barricades and sealing off the train as best they can. As the night grows darker, they try to conserve energy, bracing for whatever might come next. In a rare moment of solidarity, Mr. Selfish approaches Joe and tries to console him. He warns that if the werewolf returns, they'll need to be ready. He adds that in a situation like this, survival of the fittest may be the only rule. Mr. Selfish even suggests that if things get worse, they should consider escaping and leaving others behind to save themselves. Suddenly, the elderly woman's condition deteriorates rapidly. She begins vomiting blood. Amid the chaos, Joe realizes that one group member is missing, Mr. Fat. He goes to check on him and demands that he come out of the bathroom immediately. But Mr. Fat is stuck, wedged tightly like a greasy sandwich in the narrow space. As Joe tries to free him, the werewolf attacks from above and ends Mr. Fat's life in a gruesome instant. While the beast is distracted, Mr. Selfish takes the opportunity to sneak off the train, attempting to save only himself. Joe rushes back toward the barricaded carriage, but finds the doors locked. Thankfully, the passengers manage to pull him in just in time. Together, they reinforce the door with all their strength. But the werewolf is too strong. It crashes through their defenses. Seeing the monster up close, Ellen is paralyzed with fear. Joe leaps in to protect her from the deadly blow. As the vicious werewolf charges at Joe, Ellen musters her courage, grabs a knife, and stabs the creature in the stomach. The beast roars in rage and strikes Ellen, sending her flying across the cabin. Joe seizes an iron bar and smashes the werewolf. At the same time, Mr. Selfish, having returned, strikes it from behind. The combined blows knock the monster to the ground. Seizing their moment, the passengers rally. Armed with every tool and weapon they can find, they begin beating the creature together, severely wounding the beast. However, the werewolf suddenly rises and grabs the technician by the neck, choking him violently. In a desperate attempt to save him and end the nightmare, the Indian man grabs his axe and strikes the creature with all his strength. The werewolf collapses. Upon inspecting the body, the Indian man confirms what many feared. It truly is a werewolf, a horrifying hybrid between man and beast. At that moment, Mr. Selfish recalls a grim detail. Anyone bitten by a werewolf will become infected and eventually transform into one. Alarmed by this revelation, all eyes turn toward the elderly woman, who bears a deep bite on her leg. An old man among the passengers solemnly tells a story of a similar tragedy that happened long ago in the same forest, implying that werewolf attacks in this region have been occurring for generations. Suddenly, the supposedly dead werewolf rises once again and lets out a final, echoing howl. Joe acts fast. He grabs a fire extinguisher and uses it to crush the creature's face. But that howl was not just a dying breath. It was a signal. In the next scene, a pack of werewolves is seen lurking deep in the forest, silently planning their attack. The old lady's body begins to twitch and contort. She's starting to transform. Mr. Selfish immediately grabs a weapon, intending to kill her before the transformation completes. However, the old man, the woman's husband, refuses to let her be harmed. As Mr. Selfish lunges toward her, other passengers step in to stop him. Enraged, Mr. Selfish pushes through, knocking objects aside and striking anyone in his way. He grabs the old woman and violently chokes her. Just then, Joe bursts into the scene and knocks Mr. Selfish unconscious, preventing a complete rampage. To regain control, Joe instructs the others to tie up both Mr. Selfish and the old lady until they can plan a proper escape. The technician announces that he'll attempt to fix the train. With his knowledge of engines, he explains the steps needed and assigns tasks to the others for support. With the Indian man by his side, the technician leaves the train to repair the broken fuel line. After some time, he successfully finds and patches the leak, giving the group a renewed chance at survival. Suddenly, a noise rustles in the trees. The Indian man bravely heads into the forest with a flashlight. He hears a woman's voice and follows it, raising the light toward the treetops. There he sees the body of the annoying girl, still alive, being eaten by a werewolf. Moments later, the pack begins to chase him. They corner him in the woods and devour him alive. Back on the train, horror continues to unfold. The elderly woman now fully transforms into a werewolf. Mr. Selfish, regaining consciousness, pleads with the blonde passenger to free him so he can kill her. Just then, the technician successfully restarts the train. A glimmer of hope shines, until he looks outside and sees the werewolves circling. Luckily, they turn away for the moment. Inside, the old woman, now a werewolf, breaks free from her restraints with terrifying strength. Suddenly, a werewolf appears at a window and pulls the blonde woman out, helped by Mr. Selfish. As the train begins to move, the blonde woman is left stranded in the forest, screaming for help. The old lady, no longer recognizing her husband, bites him in the neck, spraying blood across the carriage. She then lunges at Mr. Selfish and attacks him savagely. Suddenly, the train grinds to a halt, sabotaged. Joe and Ellen run for their lives as the pack closes in. In a rare act of heroism, Joe saves Mr. Selfish by stabbing the werewolf with a giant spear through its back. Filled with rage, Joe turns on Mr. Selfish, ready to strike him down, but Ellen stops him just in time. The werewolves breach the train, forcing Joe to quickly create another barricade. But there's no time. Joe decides the only way out is to flee. Mr. Selfish, seeing a chance to survive, concludes someone must be left behind as bait. Without warning, Mr. Selfish attacks Joe with a weapon, trying to knock him out. They wrestle fiercely. To save Joe, Ellen grabs a sharp object and cuts Mr. Selfish's face, forcing him to let go. Taking advantage of the moment, Mr. Selfish traps them both inside the train and escapes alone. 3 werewolves now advance toward Joe and Ellen. At the last second, the technician appears, throwing a Molotov cocktail at one of the beasts and setting it ablaze. As he holds off the others, Ellen forces open the door. She and Joe leap from the train. Tragically, the technician is grabbed by a werewolf and killed. Joe and Ellen run through the forest, but the pack is not far behind. Realizing there's only one way to save her, Joe stops and turns back. He kisses Ellen one final time, and through tears, she runs on alone. Joe fights bravely, stabbing a werewolf in the stomach, but he's outmatched. One of them bites his neck, ending his life. The final scene shifts to the train station. Ellen arrives, bloodied, traumatized, but alive. Meanwhile, Mr. Selfish, lost and wandering in the woods, stumbles into a shadowy figure. It's Joe, now transformed into a werewolf. The pack surrounds him, and as Mr. Selfish screams, the werewolves close in.